My guide and I passed along another long corridor. My excitement increased. I was impatient for one thing only, to come face to face with that woman, to tell her. So far as anything else was concerned, I already was done for. I was mistaken in hoping that the adventure would take an heroic turn at once. In real life, these contrasts never are definitely marked out. I should have remembered from many past incidents that the burlesque was regularly mixed with the tragic in my life. We reached a little transparent door. My guide stood aside to let me pass. I found myself in the most luxurious of dressing rooms. A ground-glass ceiling diffused a gay rosy light over the marble floor. The first thing I noticed was a clock, fastened to the wall. In place of the figures for the hours, were the signs of the zodiac. The small hand had not yet reached the sign of Capricorn. Only 3 o'clock. The day seemed to have lasted a century already. And only a little more than half of it was gone. Another idea came to me, and a convulsive laugh bent me double. Antonia wants me to be at my best when I meet her. A mirror of orichalk formed one whole side of the room. Glancing into it, I realized that in all decency there was nothing exaggerated in the demand. My untrimmed beard, the frightful layer of dirt which lay about my eyes and furrowed my cheeks, my clothing, spotted by all the clay of the Sahara and torn by all the thorns of a hagar, all this made me appear a pitiable enough suitor. I lost no time in undressing and plunging into the porphyry bath in the center of the room. A delicious drowsiness came over me in that perfumed water. 1,000 little jars, spread on a costly carved wood dressing table, danced before my eyes. They were of all sizes and colors, carved in a very transparent kind of jade. The warm humidity of the atmosphere hastened my relaxation. I still had strength to think, the devil take Atlantis and the vault in Lumestre. Then I fell asleep in the bath. When I opened my eyes again, the little hand of the clock had almost reached the sign of Taurus. Before me, his black hands braced on the edge of the bath, stood a huge Negro, barefaced and bare-armed, his forehead bound with an immense orange turban. He looked at me and showed his white teeth in a silent laugh. "Who is this fellow?" The Negro laughed harder. Without saying a word, he lifted me like a feather out of the perfumed water, now of a color on which I shall not dwell. In no time at all, I was stretched out on an inclined marble table. The Negro began to massage me vigorously. "More gently there, fellow." My masseur did not reply, but laughed and rubbed still harder. "Where do you come from? Canum? Turku? You laugh too much for a Targa." Unbroken silence. The Negro was as speechless as he was hilarious. "After all, I am making a fool of myself," I said, "giving up the case. Such as he is more agreeable than Lemestre with his nightmarish erudition. But, on my word, what a recruit he would be for Hammond on the Rue de Mathurin. Cigarette, Seedy?" Without awaiting my reply, he placed his cigarette between my lips and lighted it, and resumed his task of polishing every inch of me. He doesn't talk much, but he is obliging, I thought. And I sent a puff of smoke into his face. This pleasantry seemed to delight him immensely. He showed his pleasure by giving me great slaps. When he had dressed me down sufficiently, he took a little jar from the dressing table and began to rub me with a rose-colored ointment. Weariness seemed to fly away from my rejuvenated muscles. A stroke on a copper gong. My masseur disappeared. A stunted old negress entered, dressed in the most tawdry tinsel. She was talkative as a magpie, but at first I did not understand a word in the interminable string she unwound, while she took first my hands, then my feet, and polished the nails with determined grimaces. Another stroke on the gong. The old woman gave place to another negro, grave, this time, and dressed all in white with a knitted skull cap on his oblong head. It was the barber, and a remarkably dexterous one. He quickly trimmed my hair, and, on my word, it was well done. Then, without asking me what style I preferred, he shaved me clean. I looked with pleasure at my face, once more visible. Antonia must like the American type, I thought. What an affront to the memory of her worthy grandfather, Neptune. The gay Negro entered and placed a package on the divan. The barber disappeared. I was somewhat astonished to observe that the package, which my new valet opened carefully, contained a suit of white flannels exactly like those French officers wear in Algeria in summer. The wide trousers seemed made to my measure. The tunic fitted without a wrinkle, and my astonishment was unbounded at observing that it even had 2 gilt galons, the insignia of my rank, braided on the cuffs. For shoes, there were slippers of red Morocco leather, with gold ornaments. The underwear, all of silk, seemed to have come straight from the Rue de la Paix. Dinner was excellent, I murmured, looking at myself in the mirror with satisfaction. The apartment is perfectly arranged. Yes, but... I could not repress a shudder when I suddenly recalled that room of red marble. The clock struck 4:30. Someone rapped gently on the door. The tall white targa, who had brought me, appeared in the doorway. He stepped forward, touched me on the arm and signed for me to follow. Again I followed him. We passed through interminable corridors. I was disturbed, but the warm water had given me a certain feeling of detachment. And above all, more than I wished to admit, I had a growing sense of lively curiosity. If, at that moment, someone had offered to lead me back to the route across the white plain near Chixela, would I have accepted? Hardly. I tried to feel ashamed of my curiosity. I thought of Malefew. He, too, followed this corridor. And now he is down there, in the red marble hall. I had no time to linger over this reminiscence. I was suddenly bowled over, thrown to the ground, as if by a sort of meteor. The corridor was dark, I could see nothing. I heard only a mocking growl. The white targa had flattened himself back against the wall. Good, I mumbled, picking myself up, the deviltries are beginning. We continued on our way. A glow different from that of the rose nightlights soon began to light up the corridor. We reached a high bronze door, in which a strange lacy design had been cut in filigree. A clear gong sounded, and the double doors opened part way. The targa remained in the corridor, closing the doors after me. I took a few steps forward mechanically, then paused, rooted to the spot, and rubbed my eyes. I was dazzled by the sight of the sky. Several hours of shaded light had unaccustomed me to daylight. It poured in through one whole side of the huge room. The room was in the lower part of this mountain, which was more honeycombed with corridors and passages than an Egyptian pyramid. It was on a level with the garden which I had seen in the morning from the balcony, and seemed to be a continuation of it. The carpet extended out under the great palm trees and the birds flew about the forest of pillars in the room. By contrast, the half of the room untouched by direct light from the oasis seemed dark. The sun, setting behind the mountain, painted the garden paths with rose and flamed with red upon the traditional flamingo which stood with one foot raised at the edge of the sapphire lake. Suddenly I was bowled over a second time. I felt a warm, silky touch, a burning breath on my neck. Again the mocking growl which had so disturbed me in the corridor. With a wrench, I pulled myself free and sent a chance blow at my assailant. The cry, this time of pain and rage, broke out again. It was echoed by a long peal of laughter. Furious, I turned to look for the insolent onlooker, thinking to speak my mind. And then my glance stood still. Antonia was before me. In the dimmest part of the room, under a kind of arch lit by the mauve rays from a dozen incense lamps, 4 women lay on a heap of many-colored cushions and rare white Persian rugs. I recognized the first 3 as Tuareg women, of a splendid regular beauty, dressed in magnificent robes of white silk embroidered in gold. The 4th, very dark-skinned, almost negroid, seemed younger. A tunic of red silk enhanced the dusk of her face, her arms, and her bare feet. The 4 were grouped about a sort of throne of white rugs, covered with a gigantic lion's skin, on which, half raised on one elbow, lay Antonia. Antonia. Whenever I saw her after that, I wondered if I had really looked at her before, so much more beautiful did I find her. More beautiful? Inadequate word. Inadequate language. But is it really the fault of the language or of those who abuse the word? One could not stand before her without recalling the woman for whom Aphractius overcame Atlas, of her for whom Sapor usurped the scepter of Ozymandias, for whom Mammelos subjugated Susa and Tantirus, for whom Antony fled.